Thank you for joining us and welcome. If you don't know, this kind of way this typically works, we've got a bunch of people in here. They'll be able to ask questions through the typed in chat section. I'll try to relay it. And for you guys that are not used to this, if you got questions for Brendan, type them in there and I'll try to make them happen. So anyway, well, welcome. Brendan, first of all, like I said, thank you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you located? I would like to know what part of the world I'm talking to. So where are you from and tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I'm just north of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So we are climatized to 4 seasons and it's just starting to be fall here. Leaves are falling down, starting to get colder, days are getting shorter. And who I am a holistic clinical nutritionist. I've been practicing for about 7 years now. I'm just wrapping up one of my degrees, working on my PhD in functional medicine and holistic nutrition. And my main focus is gut health. I've been mentored by absolutely some incredible doctors and teachers, and they've been some of the pioneers in functional medicine and gut health. Actually, my first mentor, Dr. Nandor Bajuz, he wrote his master's thesis on leaky gut 20 years ago. And not a lot of people knew what leaky gut was that long ago. So I was once troubled and challenged with a lot of gut issues, and I didn't know, and I didn't correlate those gut issues to just my overall health. There was one time I was in the States at a NASCAR event, and after the event, I was just going to different bazillions and stores, and I had so much gas. It was literally like fireworks in a swamp was going off in my stomach. And then and there, I decided I've got to fix my gut. So I went to my mentor. We did a full gut healing protocol. We reset my digestion, fixed my stomach acid. My allergies went away. My gut health improved, no more digestive issues. And then from that day forward, it's just been perpetuating into more and more education and on my clinical experience as well, helping individuals. I work in drug rehab. That's the most rewarding position that I've had so far to date. And yeah, just really helping people. And that's how I was introduced to you, Dr. Baker. With one of my programs, I incorporated the carnivore diet, and it has been my most successful program to date. And I've even changed vegetarians into carnivores just through this program. And it's amazing to see the life changes and the benefits that so many people have experienced through adopting this style of nutrition. So that's how I came about to meeting you. So thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for that. Certainly I think, when we look at the role that food plays just in our body in general, obviously the first place that comes in contact with it is the gut. And the gut is such a huge 70% of our immune system resides in our gut. Our gut, there's a lot more going on in our gut than we, may understand. Let's talk about gut health, because, you mentioned leaky gut. And I look at some of the work of guys like Alessio Faisano, Boston Children's, who's done a lot of stuff with gut and autoimmune disease, particularly in kids. But the dysbiosis has been come up. A lot of people are talking about the microbiome, but beyond that, like I said, the leaky gut is still kind of, some people relegate it to the realm of, kind of alternative medicine, I suppose, although it's clearly a demonstrated phenomenon that occurs. There is some degree of permeability that's normal, but the hyperpermeability seems to be the real problem here. And then there's so many other things that the gut does. It has a nervous system role, it has an immune system role. We're aware of when our gut's not working well, we have diarrhea, constipation, pain, gas, bloating, reflux, all those types of things. So what is your thought on the importance of the gut for just general health outside of just the gut itself? Does it impact our mental health? Does it impact our joints? I mean, I don't know. What's been your experience?
It's absolutely paramount for all overall health and optimized health. You cannot achieve high performance, both cognitively, physically, emotionally, spiritually, if you don't have a healthy, robust gut. Now, sure, you can kind of go a certain amount of time. It depends on what type of diet that you want, but you can only go so far. Like, you need to have a healthy gut, and it starts with overall oral health, the health of your stomach, the health of your digestive process, how much stomach acid is being produced, how is the pancreas working, are those secreting those digestive enzymes, do you have toxic bile, do you have a fatty liver? All of those things then go into the whole digestive process and the whole gut health. And so many people are starting to become more aware of gut health. But if you have, like you'd mentioned, a lot of digestive issues, like those symptoms, heartburn, gas, bloating, flatulence, etc., but people don't correlate, let's say, eczema or psoriasis or rheumatoid arthritis or diabetes or Alzheimer's. All of those are expressions of leaky gut. And all of those take a long time to develop. Actually, I really like this saying. Dr. Bob Rakowski coined this. How does a hurricane start? When the conditions are just right. And how does a tornado start? When the conditions are just right. So how does cancer start? Well, when conditions are just right. And it takes a long time for cancer to start to develop. And that's through understanding inflammation. And it all starts in the gut. And if you've got an inflamed gut, then you've got leaky gut, hyperimpermeability. Then things are invading into the systemic bloodstream, causing an immune response, causing inflammation. And if that continues to perpetuate on and on and on, just like you'd mentioned, Dr. Alessio Fasano, there's so much proven evidence that that goes and develops into an autoimmune condition, wherever the genetic weakest link is. And there you go. That's where the expression happens. So gut health is absolutely paramount for all health.
How do we objectively assess gut health? I mean, I know there's a lot of different thoughts on that. How do you do it, I suppose? Do you have any tools that you can use to assess? I mean, there's obviously the symptomatic stuff that people can tell you about, but, certain tests are available. Are there any things like that you like to look at?
There are. There's a lot of tests. You can do fecal testing. You can do blood tests, urine analysis, hair analysis. One of the things that I really like, it's called the wheat zoomer. And I forget the brand of that, but basically it's not just a regular IgG sort of allergy test. It determines what type of antibodies are present and where the antibodies are and how many there are. And if there's various, I guess, sort of proteins that are correlated to gluten or dairy and whatnot. But in terms of testing, there's so many, and I don't actually do a lot of testing because there's so many things that I can improve or we can improve upon when we just address overall digestion. We do an elimination diet. We start to reintroduce basic, holistic, whole foods, meat, obviously. When we start to do that, then obviously there's going to be a lot of changes. So oftentimes I'll work with individuals for a certain period of time without any testing, just fix some of the bare bones basics. And then after that, month 2, month 3, that's when we can do some more testing. So I do bioimpedance analysis testing. I will do blood work just to see where type of antibodies they have, stuff like that. And then if I really want, I'll do a wheat zoomer. And that's actually, I forget, like I said, I forget the brand. Dr. Tom O'Brien introduced that to me. I'll find that and I'll put that in the chat. But it's a really good blood panel, and it shows you all different sorts of foods that would be problematic that are causing an immune response.
Interesting. What are you, I mean, I guess, are you finding any foods that commonly seem to cause issues for guts? Is there things that I mean, a lot of people say, sugar and gluten, but I mean, what are you finding typically are the big offenders, I suppose?
Yeah, dairy, eggs, gluten, a lot of wheat. But a lot of times people have challenges with fiber. A lot of times people are confused that they think that they need to have lots and lots of fruits and vegetables in order for motility of their bowels. And a lot of times people who are experiencing constipation are eating too much fiber. They're not hydrated enough properly. And also they're really lacking in minerals. Minerals are so crucial for the whole microbiome health. But if people are eating, I guess, too much fiber, they're getting a little confused. They're not eating enough meat, or if they're doing really poor food combining, so fruits and protein at the same time, or if they're eating complex carbs with a lot of fats, that sometimes tends to be a problem. So for me, in my approach, I keep it super, super simple, like really simple. Just turn it into mono meals. And then that's the best way to figure out what's problematic and what isn't. But it's the main ones. And I'm sure your audience knows about this. Like gluten, we really shouldn't be consuming it. Just like you'd mentioned, Dr. Alessio Fasano has referenced so many times in publications with zonulin and hyperpermeability. So that connection, gluten, get rid of it. Dairy, Well, you live on a farm. I'm actually going to my farm this week. I'm part of a cow share program. So I get my raw, unpasteurized milk a couple times every few months, and that's a treat for me. But all of my food is organic, grass fed. So if you're not consuming raw, unpasteurized whole milk, then I would not recommend really consuming any milk, just because it's so problematic. And people don't have the enzymes to break down lactose, and it causes an immune response. Anyone who's got an inflammatory condition, get rid of dairy. So those are the two for sure. And then understanding how carbohydrates really are more problematic than most, than just, meats and vegetables sort of thing. So a lot of people will have issues with carbohydrates, but they just don't make the connection. So those are the main foods. Get rid of the carbs, those ridiculous carbs, get rid of the processed carbs, and just keep it super simple. Vegetables and meat, but a lot of meat.
Yeah, interesting. I just saw a recent study. This was published, I think, a couple of days ago, looking at some of the hormones that are produced when you combine certain food. And so there was a study, I think Dr. Trokalasian put this on his social media, and it was looking at the GLP-1, which is, incretin hormone for people who don't know, glucagon-like peptide, and also glucagon, and its response to it was lard and olive oil, and showing the response was pretty minimal. But then when you added a carbohydrate to that, I can't remember what the source of carbohydrate was, but it was just basically a carbohydrate. It dramatically changed the effect. And so the effect was it changed the satiety. These are potentially satiety inducing hormones. And so by adding carbohydrate to a non-carbohydrate meal, you decrease the satiety, and therefore you're likely going to eat more, which is, this probably has weight loss implications, but it's just kind of interesting how the differential stuff. Yeah. Somebody was asking about eggs. You mentioned eggs, and a lot of people in here are going, why eggs? Are eggs a problem? I certainly have seen some people that don't do well with eggs. I don't think it's universal, but what is the deal with eggs? Or some people have some special problem with it. Is it the white? Is it the yolks? Is it both? Is it a type of egg? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's definitely the type of egg for sure, I think. If you're getting anything factory farmed, these chickens, these laying hens, they're not healthy. They're being, totally injected with artificial hormones and antibiotics. So the eggs are very poor quality to begin with. And I find it's actually not the yolk. It's not the fat that's causing the issue. It's the protein. It's the whites. So what a lot of people are, and because there's hyperpermeability, it's always going back to gut health. So if someone has leaky gut, then basically those food molecules are entering into the systemic bloodstream. And as a natural response, the immune system is recognizing some of these proteins and attacking it. So if you can essentially heal and seal the gut for a temporary time, take out eggs, and then once we've established proper gut integrity, then you can reintroduce eggs. But at the same time, I would look for free range. I would try to find a farm or somewhere that has good quality eggs, and eat them alone. Just try one egg on its own, and then be aware of any issues. If you've got a headache, or if you've got kind of a flare up with some skin issues or anything like that, then you can be aware. But it's a lot of times it's the food combining that people are doing. That's the problem. It's not necessarily the egg. Like the egg on itself is such a complete meal of protein and fat and amino acids and all that. So it's not necessarily the egg itself that's the problem. It's the combination, and it's the leaky gut leading up to that. So, and for one, I love my raw eggs. When I was doing my bodybuilding, and I still do bodybuild, but the time when I was really, really aggressive, I was doing 12 raw eggs a day, 6 in the morning, 6 at night. And that is it's like a cycle of testosterone, just having that much eggs, that much cholesterol and healthy fats and protein. I was having no issues. The odds of getting salmonella poisoning is like 1 in 1 billion. And that's not from a raw egg. It's from a dirty shell that was contaminated with some sort of bacteria. So to answer that, I think if you were to do an elimination diet and really take eggs out temporarily for a little while and reintroduce one at a time, then there probably won't be any issues. So that's been my experience, because I'm a big advocate of eggs for sure. Actually, and
yeah, and I certainly go ahead.
Well, I can go back, so that's fine.
No, I was going to say I certainly have eggs from time to time, and I generally do well with them, so it's kind of interesting. Hey, somebody asked you about leaky gut. We've talked about that a little bit. Ways to assess that. I know there are several ways. Is there one that you find better? I mean, some people like zonulins. There's a PEG 400 test. There's double sugar test. What? How do we diagnose leaky gut? Is there a way to do that that's reliable?
Yeah, it's to be totally honest, like I said, I don't really do much testing. I assume, and I assume that pretty much everyone has a degree of leaky gut when they come to see me in my office, because everyone pretty much does. If they have never done a real gut healing protocol, then they've got leaky gut. It just depends on how severe it is, what their lifestyle condition was, and what led up to it. So it's funny. In my experience, so many times people think that like a colostomy is a good testing mechanism to see if there's leaky gut, but no, that it doesn't really do that either. So I would just say a blood test, and maybe Dr. Baker, you can answer that for me. What, in your experience, do you prefer for a leaky gut test? Because there are so many out there, but in my experience, if someone's coming to see me and they've got issues, I know they've got leaky gut. So we don't need to go through the whole rigmarole of spending hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars for testing. My approach is, okay, you've got leaky gut. We know that. Let's just work around that, and let's just start attacking things right from the ground zero. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen zonulin used pretty commonly, and then also, I mean, like I said, the PEG 400 test, which there's people think that's probably the optimal one, is just very difficult to get done. There's not many facilities that have that. So, but yeah, I mean, obviously, the gut isn't supposed to be 100% airtight. There's going to be, it's designed to absorb things. That's the whole point of it. It's kind of, it's kind of interesting interface, because we think of what interacts with the world and our environment. And most people don't know this, but our gut is actually, the inside of our mouth and our esophagus and intestines and colon is actually external to our body. It's actually as we form embryologically, there's this open tube that we wrap ourselves around. And so the gut is actually external to our body. And so it's our largest, I wouldn't say it's the largest interface we have with the outside world, but it is, when you compare it to the skin is designed to keep everything out. I mean, our skin is, when we get a cut, we have problems because we worry about bacteria and stuff, but our gut is designed to absorb things. And so there is some degree of permeability there. It's just that, like I said, when you get into a situation where it becomes hyperpermeable, then we have this so-called leaky gut issue. You mentioned bodybuilding. I'm a big proponent of lifting weights. I think everybody should, or at least resistance train. I think everybody should strive to get stronger. Does that have an effect on the gut?
It has an effect on so many body systems. Bodybuilding or resistance training, it's so paramount. I'm actually just reading a book on genetics right now, just for my schooling. And I actually just finished the chapter just on movement. And it is absolutely paramount for all body health, organ health, mental health, physical health to exercise minimum 20, 25 minutes a day. Obviously, load bearing weight is so fantastic for your posture, for your bones, for your health. And if you want to talk about gut health, then sure, we can talk about structure. And if you are a fat tub of lard and your lifestyle is completely sedentary, then of course there's going to be a structural imbalance, and there's going to be a lot of weak muscles within the abdominal area. And those organs, they're going to be not necessarily placed in the best positions. And maybe the kidneys are out of sorts, or the liver is maybe displaced a little bit. The stomach, perhaps there's a hiatal hernia, right? Those are all, hiatal hernias are very common among men and women who are overweight or who have weight imbalances. So structurally, in terms of gut health and the whole ability to digest properly, you're going to digest properly if you've got healthy body, healthy BMI, and you're not overweight and you're not living a non-active lifestyle. So I think people need to consider, and they need to look a little bit deeper as to why physical health is so important. Then if you have that understanding that, okay, structurally, if I'm in line and I'm moving my body properly and I'm exercising, then of course digestion is going to be optimized. But if you're not moving properly, you're living a sedentary lifestyle, insulin resistance happens, right? Your body isn't able to utilize insulin the way that it should be. That happens from living a non-life active lifestyle. So yeah, I absolutely love it. You love it. It's been a part of my life. And in fact, all opportunities even for business come from my healthy lifestyle and looking the way that I look. So it's an absolute joy. The day is not complete for me unless I've lifted weights, pretty much.
Yeah, no, I'm deadlifting today. I'm looking forward to it. It's always I kind of treat it like a privilege. I'm very excited that I'm able to do that. Somebody's asking about, you mentioned raw milk. How frequently is that something that you do every day, or how do you use milk in your diet?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And it's a treat for me. I don't consume it all the time. It is still mucus forming. Even when I have a glass of milk right from the farm, I do experience some phlegm build up, and I can feel the mucus sort of build up, but I drink it. And here's, guys, one of the things, and for all the audience, I don't consume and I don't eat food for pleasure. I eat for fuel. That's sure. I'm a human and I have my cheats and I have my delectables once in a while, but I eat for fuel. And when I go to the farm a few times a year and I get my raw milk, I'm drinking it for the growth factors, for the enzymes, for the healthy bacteria, but really the growth factors. There's so much growth factors in raw, unpasteurized, healthy, organic milk. So I do that. And I know that it's so powerful for my immune system. So if you have access to raw, unpasteurized milk, I would and if you've got really good gut health and you're not, and milk isn't, well, actually, I'm going to retrace steps a little bit. Share a quick little story. One of my clients, her daughter is lactose intolerant, and she suffered from any time she would have any dairy of any sorts, diarrhea, headaches, and her skin, her eczema would get really, really bad. And I had a little bit of a bet with her, with the mom. I said, I guarantee you, if I bring milk from the farm and let your daughter try it, she won't have any issues. And she was really apprehensive and she wouldn't believe it. And I said, no, it'll happen. So I finally brought some milk. She tried some, no issues, no diarrhea, no headache, no eczema, no digestive issues. Why is that? Because the milk from a cow that's unpasteurized, that's raw and whole, has all the enzymes and all the beneficial bacteria in that milk, right? So it's complete, it's whole. The body can digest it. It has the enzymes within it to digest it. Whereas if you're drinking milk that comes in a bag from the grocery store, it's just been so denatured and so bastardized, it's pulled all the essential nutrients from it. So again, to answer your question, I think once in a while, it's a treat. You should enjoy it. I don't drink it every single day, that's for sure. So just if you've got the access to it, yeah, try it, have it maybe a few times a month as a treat. Dr. Baker's deep in thought there.
No, I was reading through the comments to see if there's anything else. I didn't see anything that was extra in there. All right. So as far as, you know, what you do with clients, how do you typically, are you doing stuff online? Are you doing stuff in person? I guess it's tough to do stuff in person as of recently. And I don't know what the situation is in north of Toronto. I mean, are you doing most of your stuff online?
Yeah, I had a really great practice. I was working in two drug rehab clinics, and one of which they closed, which is horrible because drug abuse is getting so prevalent right now with regards to COVID. And then I had to practice in a city, and I had to close it because we were deemed non-essential. So I've gone back to completely everything online, even all my testing, like my BIA testing and my live blood analysis. I don't do that. It's just all back to online. So that's where I do like my group settings, and it's working really well. It's a way that I can kind of really broaden my audience and work with anyone around the world. And it just basically consists of assessment forms, getting to know their health history, their family health history. If they do have any tests or results, I can always look at that as well. And then we just work on an approach just to fix their diet. And then obviously through that comes a supplemental protocol, a detox, and then diet strategies. So that's what I'm doing right now. And then I do my group work, kind of like what you're doing right now, but just on a smaller scale.
You mentioned addiction, counseling, and it's kind of interesting. Just on a whim, this is kind of horrifying, but I was thinking about a friend of mine that I hadn't seen since early high school. It was a friend of mine I had when I was 14, 15 years old. And for some reason, I thought of him. I said, well, I'm going to type in and see if he's around or what to do. It turns out he was found face down in a pool of blood in a drug house, with a prostitute and a bag of crack cocaine. So obviously his life didn't turn out like he wanted it to. But drug addiction and alcohol and substance abuse is an absolutely just life destroying tragedy. One of the things that I've seen, and I've talked to some people that in that space, is that particularly like these inpatient rehab places, they don't really address the diet in this. And I think there's such a huge opportunity there. And one of the things that's always shocked me, not anymore because I've seen it so often, is that people going on, say a carnivore diet, often they'll say, hey, I just lost a desire to do that stuff. I don't really want to, smoke pot anymore, or I don't want to, shoot up or drink to excess. What is your thought on the role of food and gut health as it relates to addiction?
Yeah, excellent point. It's when I first, actually both clinics, when I first started, and I would be working with the doctors cooperatively with the patients, putting together protocols through whatever they're trying to detox from. And my approach always, first and foremost, is put them on a juice cleanse, because it's a sure way to facilitate detoxification, but at the same time, deliver a concentrated amount of phytonutrients, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and just helps perpetuate that whole detoxification process. That was the first challenge that I had, because most times the doctors were like, no, we can't do that. They're going to be starving. Their stomachs are going to implode. They need food. They need substance. And fasting in itself is so healing, and it helps perpetuate autophagy. And when you can achieve that, your body's detoxifying so much faster. So I would do that first and foremost. And then after that, I would try to get them to do a ketogenic carnivore style diet, get rid of all the processed carbohydrates, get rid of the sugars, and just incorporate meat and vegetables. Super easy. It's a challenge, obviously, with some individuals if they're in substance abuse and they've been binging on McDonald's and heroin for the last 10 days or whatnot. I know that's an extreme case, but most times, pretty much 99% of the time, if someone has substance, or if they're abusing substances, diet is the last thing that they're thinking about. They're just focusing on consuming the alcohol or smoking whatever the substance is, or inhaling it, whatever the case may be. Diet's the last thing. So if you can simplify diet and incorporate good, healthy foods, meat obviously being one of them, then as you'd mentioned, same thing. Urges, sugar cravings, they subside. And one of the things that's really fascinating is glucomorphines. They're basically the body, when the body consumes glucose and sugar, it acts as sort of morphine on some of these receptor sites, like the serotonin, one of the neurotransmitters. So there's a correlation and connection with addiction and sugar and cravings and acting on those types of foods. There's a reason why they call them comfort foods, because it acts on those neurotransmitters that make you feel good. And oftentimes when someone has an addiction to, let's just say cocaine, for example, when you eliminate the cocaine, they're going to need something else to get that same sort of feeling and that sensation from. And oftentimes they go to sugar. And actually there's a really good book. Where is it? Somewhere here, The Case Against the Sugar. And one of the studies, and Dr. Baker, I know you're probably familiar with one of these studies, but they put cocaine essentially in the water of the rats. And I think that's how it went. But anyways, the rats became addicted to the cocaine, they became addicted to the sugar over the cocaine. That's just how powerful sugar is. Sugar is very, very addicting. So if you can eliminate sugar, obviously there's going to be some bouts of withdrawal and people are going to get very, very cranky. But once they can get over that main hurdle, then when they're eating a ketogenic style diet with a lot of healthy fats, cravings completely subside. And talking about now, we're going to go to gut health. There's a lot of times that there's an imbalance of gut microbiome, like healthy bacteria and bad bacteria. There's two bacteria, one's called the Firmicutes family and one's called the Bacteroides family. And the Firmicutes bacteria is actually an imbalance of unhealthy bacteria, and they thrive on sugar, and they actually make the body crave those sugars. And when they poop, they actually make the body sort of gain weight more so. So it's understanding that there's a huge connection with healthy microbiome and addiction and so forth. So if you've got an imbalance of gut microbes, they actually crave and give you those signals to give you more sugar and more carbs. So eliminate that. As a result, the microbiome is going to start to get reestablished, and then cravings subside. I know it kind of went off track a little bit, but it's really interesting how the connection is.
Yeah, it's interesting how everything relates. Got a question, you kind of mentioned, not pairing, say, fruit with protein. What is the rationale behind that particular sentiment? And then are there other sort of problematic, because you said simplify making a mono meal. Are there certain food combinations that are particularly problematic? And if so, can you discuss some of them?
Yeah. The thing that happens, and most people make the mistake by adding and just combining foods. Like we've been taught to have a beautiful, diverse, colorful plate. And in some applications, that's great. It is good to have a colorful plate. But at the same time, if you're combining, let's say, fruit, maybe melons and watermelons and strawberries, and you're having some protein afterwards or before that, it doesn't matter what the combination is or even the timing, you're going to get some putrefaction happening. You're going to get some rotting essentially happening in the gut, because you've got this very, very dense protein that takes a significant time and amount of energy to digest and break down into small little amino acids. And then you've got this super, super, super easy to digest, watery, high fructose fruit that digests super easy, and it turns into sugar. And when you've got protein and sugar combined in the small intestine, that's when you're going to get a lot of gas happening and rotting happening. So I always keep my fruit completely away from my meat. One of the ones it's funny, and I laugh whenever I see this, but when you buy like a platter, for example, there's a lot of melons, and you should always have your melons completely alone from everything. So if you want to have, let's say, a watermelon in the summertime, don't have it with anything. It should be completely separate from all other foods, because there's just so much sugar in it, and it has a chance to rot and putrefy in the gut, and it just feeds those gut bugs. So definitely keep away from the proteins and the high fructose fruits. Keep the melons away. And then, for example, like broccoli is a good one. Broccoli's got a lot of fiber, really a lot of fiber, and the gut bugs love broccoli. So if you've got somewhat of an imbalance of gut microbiome of the healthy bacteria and the bad bacteria, if you eat a lot of broccoli, a lot of times people will experience a lot of gas and bloating, just because those bugs are just eating up all of that fiber, and then they're pooping, and that poop emits gas. So one of the ways around it is just like really overcooking, or, really cooking down that broccoli so it's super, super soft. So that helps break down some of the fibers. But that's where it's a lot easier to eat a mono meal. If you want to have broccoli, sure, have a big bowl of broccoli on its own. A lot of times if people have compromised digestion, it's so simple to go one meal at a time. And that's why meat is so powerful to have it on its own. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions is so many people think that meat rots in the gut, and it doesn't. It's the combinations, and it's the proteins and the carbs, or the proteins and the starches that causes the problem. So with that, yeah, just keep it simple. Really, really simple.
One of the things you'd mentioned earlier, and something that I've seen some really high level athletes, like world-class athletes that have a lot of gut issues, even though they're exercising, they're lean, they physically look good, but their guts are destroyed. What's going on with there's a classic, as a bodybuilder, there's the bodybuilder diet, the lean chicken and the basically the fibrous vegetables is kind of what goes to. But what's happening with those people? Have you seen anything that they typically are making mistakes with?
Yeah, and I was that guy too. I did that. And that's why I really like working in the bodybuilding community, because Their athletes are very easy to work with. They're very good at taking direction and following protocols, and they're very consistent. So that's easy. And when you can give someone who's open-minded and eager to learn and to apply changes, like, you're going to get some awesome results. But typically a bodybuilder diet is a lot of rice and potatoes, or sorry, rice and meat, or potatoes and meat. They're drinking a lot of fluids with their meals because they need to stay hydrated. Like, they're told to drink, let's say, 4 liters of water a day. So they're drinking copious amounts of water, or BCAAs with shitty artificial, sweeteners, and they're drinking that with their meal. So that's one thing. They're force feeding themselves and they're eating super, super fast. So there's no chewing whatsoever. A lot of times they're buying boneless, skinless chicken breast. So really, where are the nutrients with that? There's no fat. They're not eating from the whole bird. And this is one of the biggest things that I changed right away when I started to become more of a holistic bodybuilder, is that I would just buy a whole chicken and then roast that. And I would eat the skin. I would eat the fat, provided it was an organic bird. And if you want to talk little airy fairy on the spiritual side, you've got all of the energy of the bird right here. So you're consuming all of it. If you're buying a whole box of boneless, skinless chicken breasts, there might very well be one breast from one bird and then 5 other breasts from another bird, and you're not eating both breasts. Why is that? There could be a tumor on one of those breasts, and the processing plant just decided to omit that particular breast. So you don't know what exactly you're eating. You don't know if you're eating a healthy bird. Maybe the bird had tumors all over and just that one breast was the only place where it didn't. So if you're eating the whole bird, that's one of the things. Another thing, and another reason why bodybuilders, or let's just say athletes, have such crummy digestion, they often eat right before bed. And if we understand the importance of digestion, it's called rest and digest, and the parasympathetic nervous system, the body needs to be resting in order to digest properly. But here's the thing. When you're also resting, you're in a state of detox, especially when you're going to bed. So if you're sleeping and you've got a stomach full of food, the body is not going to be focused on digesting that food. It's actually going to be focusing on the whole detoxification process. So basically, you've got a stomach full of food. You wake up in the morning and then you pound back another big meal. That's when issues really start to happen. That's when leaky gut happens. And that's when compromised digestion happens. You've got these larger food molecules that are entering into the gut, and they're just causing more and more gas. I see it so often. I've these beautiful female athletes and these males that have incredible physiques, and yet their stomachs feel like crap. And then by every evening, they're bloated. And then it's on Dr. Baker, you've done this and I've done this. I've called out people and I've seen people on Instagram saying, oh, bloating is natural. No, it's not natural. Bloating is not okay. And if you have bloating, there's 2 things that's the problem. Either the food is wrong or the digestion is wrong, right? So bloating is not a natural occurrence. And if you've got bloating, then there's an issue that needs to be addressed. And my favorite thing to do is empty out the gut, do a detox, completely fast for a certain amount of time, give yourself a new kind of baseline, and then start from there. But bodybuilders and athletes are the worst because they've got this misconception that they always need carbs. They always need to eat. They need to eat 6-7 meals a day. And when you're doing that, there's not a lot of time for digestion. So it's fun to be able to work with athletes and just totally change their paradigms and do programs like this, because once they understand how the digestive process works, then they really start to see some good results, and they get stronger and better and faster, and their performance improves.
There is, I guess for whatever reason, controversy around protein. There's advocates that we eat far too much protein, that we only need 50 or 60 grams of protein to do what we need to do. There's other folks that'll say, hey, no, we need more like, 1 gram per pound of body weight, or even more, depending if you're a competitive bodybuilder or into strength sports. What is your thought on protein goals?
Yeah, it is an ongoing sort of open debate. 1 gram of protein per body pound of weight, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that I think is, if you eat intuitively and you have developed an intuitive factor, eat till you're full. And when you're full, don't eat anymore. In terms of protein, I really don't think, in my experience, that you can overdo it too much if you're eating good quality meats. If you're eating, let's say, a large steak or multiple steaks, when you're full, you're full. You just stop eating. And then your body has lots of time to digest and process all those proteins. But if you're a high performance athlete, you need that protein. And if you're not eating enough, your body's going to start to muscle waste and deteriorate, and you're going to have weak joints, tendons, and ligaments that are susceptible to tears and tweaks and so forth. But in terms of having too much, I think one of the things is, and actually you'd mentioned this in one of our calls, and I've really started to research it more, is consuming too much protein powder. I think that could be problematic for some people because it's such a high concentration of protein. Whereas if you're eating protein from an animal, it's a steak and whatnot, you've got fats that are combined with it. You've got other additional elements that are involved with enzymes and healthy bacteria. But if you're eating, 2 or 3 crazy 40-gram protein shakes in addition to your meals, that could be a little bit more problematic. But in terms of meat consumption, I haven't seen people overdoing it. And just like in your Meat RX group and everyone that's done my program, when they're having 2 or 3 steaks a day with even some fish or some poultry, no one has issues. No one. In fact, their bodies get even better. Their digestion improves even more. So.
Yeah, I guess that's when I think about, in the days before we had food scales and we knew what was in food, even a few hundred years ago, there had to be some sort of natural way to regulate how much food we're eating. And, you think appetite has to do with it. And if you assume humans have been eating meat, and we have for a long time, then there would be some sort of, natural shut off on this. And, when everybody asks me about too much protein, I have to say, well, define too much protein, because too much of anything, just by definition, is a problem. You've basically just stated it's too much, but then you don't say what the number is. And I think there is a kind of a natural feedback. And I do think, with the protein powders being, just hyper absorbed, and the surface area is so small, there's no real digestion is required. You don't have to digest protein in a classic sense. It's already microscopic in size, or almost microscopic in size. So changes that digestibility for sure. Okay, so let me ask you about your thoughts on, do we see differences between men and women, for instance? That's always a common topic. Are you seeing significant male-female differences? And I want to put this out there. I will almost put the sort of the perimenopausal woman as a different species in itself, because it's such, no offense to any women, I hope that doesn't come off as offensive, but it's just a different total dynamic, I think, when you get to that group. So are you seeing any differences in men and women in general, and then women that are dealing with sort of menopausal issues versus women that aren't?
Yeah. My girlfriend, I actually just started to find myself in a relationship for the first time in a really long time. And she's a little bit older, and she's had 2 kids, and she's just starting to notice her changes in menstruation and so forth. And there's a big connection when there's too much carbohydrates or some delectable sweets compared to when she's going predominantly all meat. And when she's going all meat, there's no bloating. Her menstrual cycles are far less severe. Her PMS symptoms are far less severe, less cravings, less moodiness. Whereas if she feels though that she's just eating normally, she's a lot more symptomatic in terms of premenstrual syndrome. So it's an interesting observation. And then my mom, for example, she's just turned 60. When I get her to eat all meat only, she feels so much better. Her hot flashes and those types of symptoms, they're not as severe. It's across the board. It's the human body, whether it's male or female. When you eliminate the problematic foods and the sugars and the processed garbage and the hydrogenated oils, and you incorporate just good quality meats, and in my case, I do love vegetables, but if you keep it super simple, you see so many benefits. So I think it's even more paramount and more important for women who are in that perimenopausal phase and women who are in their childbearing phase to be on predominantly meat diet, because there's no factors. There's no factors that are causing a rise in blood sugar. It's supporting their gut. There's not a lot of leaky gut that's happening. Hormones start to get more regulated. So, and then for men, if they're eating a good amount, then they can turn that into fuel for the gym. They can start to get muscle repair. They can start to develop more lean tissue, more strength. So it's kind of a no-brainer that everyone should adopt this lifestyle, regardless of gender and age. Now, if you're really old, and age is a factor when we're considering stomach acid and the ability to produce stomach acid. So someone might want to consider supplementing with, betaine and some digestive enzymes that promote stomach acid, especially when they get older. And that'll help with the whole digestion of protein anyways. And it's fair to say that most people, as they get older and older, they do eat less meat. And that's really counterintuitive, counterproductive. They need to actually have more meat, more protein, so that they can really help with their muscles and prevent that whole muscle wasting, because that is happening across the board, regardless of male or female, when they get older.
Yeah, I mean, we're so caught up in the obesity epidemic that we also fail to realize there is really an epidemic of sarcopenia and frailty. And there's the worst combination, which is sarcopenic obesity. That is, you just have a lot of body fat and very little muscle on top of that, and that becomes doubly problematic. But let me ask you about, you mentioned as you get older, a lot of people are eating less meat. They're I mean, often at the advice of their doctor, unfortunately, they're telling them, you need to cut back on that and just eat some more, whatever, leafy green vegetables. And that, I saw it all the time, and it's just an enormous amount of frailty we see. Do you find that, are you seeing that there's more reluctance to eat meat now than in the past? Or what has your experience been?
I think there is more reluctance to eat meat now than ever before, just because there's so much new information and supportive information that veganism and vegetarianism is so much healthier, especially with what's happening in the States right now with just pushing. And there's this narrative to promote more plant-based meats and getting rid of red meats. And they're saying that it's causing climate change, global climate change, and all that stuff. And I don't know. I really don't buy into that. Anytime the government is trying to push a certain narrative, you've got to question that and kind of think, why is that? Is there an agenda behind that? So actually, one of my last groups, I got to work with a husband and wife. She was 63 or 64, and he was 67, and they had gone vegetarian for the last 3 years. And she decided to get one of these things, the vaccine. And since then, her digestion was really, really bad, chronic diarrhea. So we reset, we did a detox. The husband was open to trying new things. So the first week we went keto with just a basic veg. And then the second week we went all carnivore. And they were open to doing it, which was really awesome, because most vegetarians are closed-minded, whatever. That's their own choice, but they were open, and they found and they saw so much success that they felt both better. They started to gain a little bit of muscle mass. And so now they're not full-blown vegetarians anymore. They're eating meat on the regular. They enjoy their lamb chops. The husband loves a T-bone steak, and they're now reintroducing meat a few times a week. And they're seeing a lot more better results. And the wife, she's no longer experiencing any issues with chronic diarrhea anymore when she was previously to that, right? So it just goes to show, if you can have an appreciation for meat properly and understand how to use it and consume it properly, you're going to get a lot of better results. So yeah, it's crazy, because you see the video Game Changers, and you see all these people that are pushing veganism, but they're not healthy, and they don't tell you that they've got chronic gas and bloating and digestive issues. They don't tell you that, but there's a reason for that, because the gut bugs are just eating all of that fiber and creating so much gas. but meat heals.
Yeah, I certainly would agree with the meat heals part. I've just seen it too much to not agree with that. One of the things with, you do see some people that at least appear to be doing well on plant-based diets. And I think this is a minority of people. And then people look to them as role models. And for whatever reason, maybe they're genetically gifted and they would do well on any diet. Or at least athletically, some people are just, they're just genetically lean and muscular and they look great. And that's a huge advantage. And then, so they sort of promote these people. And then the 95% of people that don't get those results, are just they just feel bad about themselves. Do you find that, so Canada, I know, came out with a food guide, I think last year, maybe, or 2 years, maybe it was last year, and it was predominantly plant-based. Now, you said you said something, you're a holistic nutritionist. Are there a lot of nutritionists in Canada that are on board with the plant-based, or is there a pretty even mix, or what's your experience?
Yeah, the food guide was a couple years ago. It is a new food guide, and it is a lot more plant sources. And there's not a lot of people like me, and I don't even like the term nutritionist for me, because I'm a whole different breed of an animal, and I don't practice what mainstream teaches. And there's a lot of dietitians that follow the Canadian food guide, and the Canadian food guide is great for someone that's completely brand new, that knows absolutely nothing about nutrition. Sure, there's some simple steps to follow that will start to improve one's health. And Dr. Baker, you were mentioning just about a lot of vegetarians and trying that style of nutrition, that diet, and they feel good. I call that the honeymoon phase. And sure, they might feel good for a certain amount of time, but if they continue down that path, that will definitely lead to some problems down the road, to some chronic issues. So yeah, it's any type of diet overhaul compared to what most people have been living, they're going to see a lot of success. But if you're missing a lot of those important nutrients, and if you're just focusing on carbohydrates and plants, and you're missing proteins and you're missing enzymes and minerals, then eventually that will lead to some problems. That's why so many people make the change eventually when they go back to veganism, they go back to eating meat, because they knew that they were missing some of the proteins. It's actually that's one of the biggest problems that vegans face, is not only do they not consuming enough protein, but they're really eating a lot of lectins. And some of the highest protein plant sources are very high in lectins. And if you're familiar with Dr. Gundry's work, Plant Paradox, he talks about plant lectins, and those lectins cause an immune response, and those can really cause a lot of digestive issues, and down the road will develop into an autoimmune condition. So that's another challenge that vegans are faced with, because those proteins are high in lectins.
Yeah, I've got a question here about bodybuilding, and so how are you getting people in contest? I don't know if you're dealing with people that are getting into contests, but if you did, how do you get people ready for a contest and getting down to that, very low level of body fat that's required?
The easiest, actually, I had a Corbin, I forget his name, Corbin something. He's an actor out in LA, and he had a topless scene in a I don't know if it was a movie or a TV show. He didn't give me much time at all to work with him. And the easiest thing I said, I'm like, okay, we're going to go intermittent fasting, and we're going to go carnivore for the next 14 days. That's it. No carbohydrates whatsoever. I want to deplete all of your glucose and glycogen levels in order to really put you at a flat line. And then as that happened, he continued to do cardio. He continued to work out. He's tried to burn off as much fat as he could, which he did. And then he started to burn off as much surplus of glucose. And as he continued to do that, it got better and better and better. And then when it came time to being in front of the camera, we actually reintroduced some basic, very, very easy to digest, but high on the glycemic index carbohydrates. And that essentially filled up his muscles and gave him a lot more fullness and definition. And it's the same principle than you're working with a bodybuilder, that's someone that's going on stage. You get to play with, and this is where biohacking comes in, you get to play with fat loading and carb loading and carb backloading. So essentially it's a pretty easy to understand equation if you understand how the body metabolizes and uses glucose and glycogen. So you essentially want to deplete all of those glycogen stores. How do you do that? You cut basically, or you significantly reduce one's carbohydrate intake, get them to a point where they're burning a lot of fat and they almost at a plateau. You reintroduce carbohydrates, fill up those glycogen stores again, and then you cut back and you start to go deplete even more and more and more. And obviously you do that with fat loading as well. You increase your fats and then you take the fats out and you let your body metabolize and turn those into ketones and then turn into more and more body fat burning. So it's to be able to be that lean, you know, where you've got crazy abs and the vascularity, that just comes with ongoing cardiovascular training, but also more and more fat loss. That's just through, again, like just, it's got to be a tight diet and it's understanding how to reintroduce carbohydrates. But the best results, the best way to get there is going keto carnivore, all meat.
Yeah, I've heard that from a number of people I've had the opportunity to work with it. It's just the easiest thing they can do. Hey, I'm unfortunately running out of time, Brendan. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for doing this. Can you share with us where people can find more? What's your social media, that type of stuff?
Yeah, should be happy to. So my Instagram, that's pretty much where I do all my my postings and stuff. It's just Brendan, BRENDANMA Coates, as you see on the screen there. And if you just search the Gut Whisperer, you'll find me, because that's what I'm known as. I'm known as the Gut Whisperer.
All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this, and good luck to you, and keep up the good work. Everybody will see you guys back tomorrow. You guys have a great day. Thanks so much, guys. Got to go. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye. See you later. Bye.
Join Revero.health for a 30-day free trial to get access to live Q&A with VIP guests, social community meetings, member discounts, low-carb healthcare providers list, forum, workouts, monthly challenges, early access to podcasts, recipes, carnivore diet guide, fasting guide, shred guide, and much more.